The next story we've got here is commentator David Pakman, amongst others, is secretly getting paid to shill for the Democratic Party. There was this article on Wired that says a dark money group is...
I can't believe that worked. I can't believe that worked.
Do you see how the abuse of women, I mean, the talking to women actually work?
All right,
go ahead, Jake. I'm sorry.
A dark money group is secretly funding high...
Hey, we're trying to run a serious show here, guys. Get it together.
It's very serious.
Sorry, Jake, you were saying?
Anyways, I was saying a dark money group is secretly funding high-profile Democratic influencers. An initiative aimed at boosting Democrats online offers influencers up to $8,000 a month to push the party line. All they have to do is keep it secret and agree to restrictions on their content.
Is this organization by chance called Progressive Victory?
No, they're not. They're not. They're another one.
Okay, so, and who runs them? Bet you it's going to be the same people.
I actually don't know who runs them. I don't even know if this article says who runs them, but it does say who's being paid, and it's different to the Progressive Victory, because the Progressive Victory guys, they tend to focus on your like Destinies and Not So Erudite and Pixie and Harry Sisson, right? And these types of people. But this one looks to have a whole different sort of roster going on.
Yeah, it's because listen, the first Progressive Victory pack was a wild success for tranny Brianna Wu. Wild in its success in this way. They did mobilize streamers into IRL action for canvassing and bought up most of Twitch politics for pennies on the dollar. You could not have bought up more political influencers for cheaper than what they managed to get away with on that and actually get political action out of them. So it was a wildly successful program. It wasn't successful in application. That was its problem. It was successful in buying the influencer, not successful even after the influencers were mobilized in getting the operation itself successful. So it doesn't surprise me that other PACs or groups or NGOs would come in and begin similar styles of subversion. But most of these leftists, if you've noticed on their channels, they make very little money. So where the do they get all their money? How is it like the Crucible beats the shit out of all these people in super chats and things like this? We just destroy them. So where do these guys get their money? They get them from background groups like this. The good news is, though, is that they do have to disclose those by law, but they find workarounds for that where they say things like, no, I don't technically work for them. I'm a contractor, and they just happen to agree with my message. So they find little workarounds.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was speaking to someone the other day and they were talking about how they did a show with a progressive person. And this person put them up in an American city for like 3 months, flew them out first class and everything. And I looked at the person's channel and they weren't much bigger than my channel. And I was like, I couldn't afford to do that with somebody, put them up in a city for 3 months, pay all their expenses, fly them first class just to do a show with them. And the show wasn't even popular. I mean, and I was thinking, where do they get their money from? And it kind of does make sense because that person was sort of in this orbit. But it said influencers included in communication about the program, and in some cases, an onboarding session for those receiving payments from the 1630 Fund. We can do some research into who runs the 1630 Fund. Maybe if anybody's quick to the research here, that would be good. Include Olivia Juliana. I don't know who the these people are. Olivia Juliana, the centrist Gen Z influencer who spoke at the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Lauren Peretra, former Playboy executive turned political influencer who hosts a podcast for the Occupy Democrats. Barrett Adair, a content creator who runs an American Girl doll themed pro DNC meme account. Susan Lambert, the Regina George liberal. Ariel Fodor, an education content creator. Sandra Jennings, a trans influencer, and David Pakman.
David Pakman.
Yeah.
Interesting. David Pakman, who has lamented recently about the organization of progressives and how they are destined to lose due to the fact that, well, we can get into that too. I think you have something on Mr. Pakman, don't you?
Well, I've got this, and then he did make a video on it. But the thing is, it was weird. I sent you that video, and then I looked back at it later, and it was almost like he'd edited the video. It was cut. But I can find something in the background here. But go on about David Pakman.
Yeah, Pakman is another one who I have sent requests in from multiple different major debate channels who are willing to pay him to come out and do a live debate with yours truly. One such podcast is I believe it's the second largest on Apple Podcast, who wanted to host this debate. Reached out to Pakman, and Pakman turned it down within 5 minutes, regardless of the amount of money which was going to be offered, because these guys get completely humiliated when they have to take on somebody on the right who's actually good at what they do. So it is too bad, because it's one head I don't have on the wall that I've been wanting for a long time, but I just got a feeling it'll happen at some point. I mean, Pierce Morgan appearance, some progressive appearance, eventually it's going to happen.
Yeah, but it is funny that apparently, I mean, according to Glenn Greenwald, David Pakman is getting about $8,000 a month from these, and I mean that's pretty good money from one organization.
That's only one NGO which is working with Pakman, and he would not be the only one.
Glenn Greenwald here says David A. Pakman makes well in excess of $1 million a year doing nothing but shilling for the DNC. These people think you're dumb enough to believe they're secretly paying him $8K a month in dark money from liberal billionaires just to attend classes on how to make any content he wants. Because Brian Tyler Cohen, the other David Pakman, as far as I'm concerned, they're all the same. Him and Billy Beasley or whatever the guy was.
What did you say? Brian Tyler destroyed him?
Yes, right.
Yeah,
that's
Brian Tyler destroyed him. Yeah. I've done that a couple of times. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Jimmy Beasley, the little guy that you debated.
Yeah, destroyed him too.
Yeah. Brian says creators get a stipend for being in the program and attending trainings. Chorus doesn't police anyone's content. Do you expect every tweet and video to be preceded by FYI? I am part of a scholarship program where I learn tips on optimizing my content. Now, Brian Tyler Cohen is the head of this. It's his company that the money is flowing through. If it were Russian money, then he would be Lauren Chen, to put it in context.
Good analysis. But I would just point out, it's probably actually not him. Ultimately, the streamers are utilized as frontmen, and here's why they're utilized as frontmen. So I'm pretty interconnected with most of what I would consider to be mainstream right-wing voices on the internet, right? Whether you consider them to be far right, dissident right, whatever. I probably know them and have talked with them at some point. What they would do is they would take a person like me who they think would have influence in contacts. So like a trusted influencer. Hey, people trust you. They think that your word is good. And the streamers that you work with generally seem to have a fairly high opinion of you personally, even if they disagree with many of your takes. So they would utilize a frontman like that in order to get other people on board. Of course, it's a bribe. And of course, it's to push out some kind of narrative and under the guise of content training. This guy's a liar and a spin artist, because all of them are liars and spin artists.
It looks that way, doesn't it? It looks that way. And you often wonder when you see them just shamelessly pushing the DNC message, saying that Joe Biden is fit and healthy. Joe Biden, we're hearing reports from the White House that Joe Biden is sharper than he's actually ever been. When you hear them say these sorts of things, you're like, how much? How much did they pay you? Surely.
Well, they get the same. I mean, the Crucible has intercepted debate talking point memos, which go through, if they say this, you say this. If they say that, you say this. If they say this, you say that. Right? We've intercepted those many, many, many times from our audience who's in various Discord servers and Telegram groups. There's no reason in the world for us to assume that this exact same thing doesn't happen when it comes to political messaging and political engineering. In fact, we saw a recent example of that on the right. Do you remember when this whole big thing was happening around whether or not you could use food stamps to buy soda pop and lobster, and a bunch of these kind of mainstream right-wing channels and tweets and shit like that were saying, I can't believe that you would say that you can't get whatever you want with your food stamps. And then we find out that there was a political broadcast which was put out from an organization they all work with that basically wanted all of them to punch that message. So this happens not only on both sides, but it is much more prominently organized, well-funded, and kind of well discerned by the left, and they do it in a much darker way, which is more nefarious and harder to track using affiliates.
Yeah, I mean, how do you really? You can't really stop this, though, can you? Because when you look at the
Yeah,
mainstream
you can
media, like the
stop it.
traditional mainstream media, you look at something like Operation Mockingbird, where the government, the CIA, had all these talking heads within the mainstream media. It kind of seems like something similar happening here, but to a smaller extent, where these influencers are being paid by these big NGOs to basically be talking heads, propaganda outlets.
Well, government co-opting mainstream media for the purposes of political messaging, if it's in regards to national security, makes sense to me. For instance, you don't want to be fighting a war with a foreign nation and have any propaganda on the airwaves which is anti your nation, right? That was going to bring morale down. And ultimately, that does make sure that your people suffer. And it's also a way that the enemy can infiltrate and give improper messaging the other way, like Tokyo Rose and others, and Hanoi Jane Fonda and many of these other kind of uh, people who come in and go out of their way to demoralize the military in question. So there probably does need to be some of that to some degree, but that's not really what's going on here. What's going on here is private NGOs are funding influencers, and these influencers are basically selling out to them. This has nothing to do with national security or the idea that the federal government is coming in and saying, under the guise of national security, you need to change some of this messaging.
Right.
That to me would be far more understandable. This to me is just nothing but good old fashioned corruption that should be addressed and addressed quickly.